So first of all, I want to recognize and thank Breaking Barriers group, the student group here. You're part of that group who organized this today. Can you please stand? Breaking Barriers, wave them.
Arguing with people on the street or whatever it is not going to change anything. It's not going to create reform. It's not going to it's not going to elevate the situation, right? Use, I guess, situations like this as a way to inform yourself, to teach others in a respectful way. The worst thing to do is to argue with people when they are misinformed or when they are wrong. The whole point is to educate individuals and understand their standpoint. You're never going to change someone's mind if you attack them. You're really just going to let them solidify in their own beliefs regardless of what that is. So when you see one of the Kardashians with braids and they'll like, oh, it's boxer braids or it's this or it's whatever, and then you go to school and you have that same hairstyle and your teacher is telling you to take it out. When children are having to cut their dreads off, when you go to work and they're like, your hair is not professional and you just have braids in, right? When I went for my job, one of my fears, which some people might not have to think about, but me as a black woman, I go to my job and I have natural hair, I always have to wonder, if I do not get this job, is it because of my appearance? Right? Is it because of the way my hair is? So then I do have to find myself in some situations to assimilate into the dominant culture, being white culture, just so that I can seem acceptable to them. Now, granted, I already got the job, so now I have dreads. Can't fire me now. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things that I guess people get so passionate about it, because when you have to explain every single aspect of your identity, it becomes tiring. I should have to explain why my hair is in dreads, and then have to face the backlash of my hair being dreaded. When I know the history of it, and that history is beautiful, but there is some white kid down the street with dreads, and it looks ridiculous, and he doesn't know the history. And he can get away with anything, or she can get away with anything. But me, I have to explain my existence. I think that's what hurts the most when you see people appropriate our culture. They're robbing us of things that have been ours from the beginning, and then just because it's on a fairer skin, then it's trendy. You know what I mean? Then it's acceptable. You know, so it's one of those things like when we are perceived as dirty for our hair or ghetto and all these things, one thing that I always thought is ghetto, or a thing that people perceive as ghetto, is just art before it has been appropriated. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with what we do and how we wear our hair and how we dress and what we look like, because it is us and we are valid and it is enough.
So like, for example, like one of the big topics recently was it was NAB. You guys know NAB, right? Yeah. Right. So NAB for the people that don't know is Indian, right? Is he Indian? Sorry. He's a brown boy. That's what he calls him. So he calls him a brown boy, and he uses the N-word. So he caught a lot of backlash for it because he's not black, and he probably doesn't know where the word comes from and all that stuff. But he's in a culture that is so accepting of the word. So it's like, it's kind of a double standard when rappers use the word so often and then get mad when people use it, because it's like, you have to know that your fan base is more diverse than just black people. So when you use it, you're basically telling every single one of your fans that it's okay to use this word. So they're pretty much putting the word on a big scale and then saying like, don't use it. Like how, like as a fan, that's not black. If I go to a concert and I'm just, I'm screaming all the words to every song, it's gonna be uncomfortable when I have to keep pausing and going back in and pausing and going back in. So it's like when you get more comfortable and you listen to words all the time, you're getting more comfortable with it. So I think in just music, it's become such a natural, like a normal thing that like it doesn't even like, does the word even mean what it used to mean?
I think someone that has 4 kids, and my kids tend to use this word a lot, obviously from the music they listen to. It stems from a lot of their cultural background, in the sense of when they listen to it, they throw it around. And until I actually introduced the origin of where the word came from, the conversation changed. And And I think that's the biggest thing, and I think that's why this is so important, is when you understand the origin of the word and what the word represents and what the word signifies, you have more of an enlightening position of when you use the word. Yes, people say it in the context, sometimes it's in the context, but I think the words still represent a certain part of history and a certain part of a time that was, a dark place in time. And I think it's time that we have to look at, movies like the Black Panther and uplift our consciousness and uplift our thought, and not to be suppressed in this same mentality. It's time we elevate ourselves and see ourselves as kings and queens instead of, niggers. So I think it's very important that we elevate our mind, elevate our consciousness. Our word is sound, and sound is power. So it's very important how we use the words that we use and when we use it, because sometimes you might be thinking, you might be joking, call someone an N-word, but not knowing that spiritually you might be putting them down, right? So I think it's time that we, these conversations are very important to have, and we be very mindful of the origin of the words and the context of what we use these words in. Thank you.
I will definitely reiterate that I don't think that the word should be used in any context, ever. Again, if you go back to the origins and the roots of where the word came from, it just re-invokes an internalized oppressive mindset. And so if we are talking about reclaiming this word, nigger, which comes from a colonizer and a dominant versus oppressive stance, why would you want to continue to reclaim such a word that has such a negative image about your identity? And the more that we idly sit by and reinforce that negativity between us, in mixed company, in any space, I think we're just continuing to reinforce that negativity around our image. And it evokes a negative self-identity and self-concept. So if we're going to rise up against it, yeah, okay, so they use it and use it. But you have to make a decision that you're not going to reinforce those messages in your own self-identity. So you have to know yourself, as opposed to getting caught up in what some other person's identity that that message they're trying to spread. You're taking it on for yourself without really knowing, is that who you really are? And if you're really not about that, then don't use the word in any context. I don't condone it between black kids. No, not a chance, because it's negative. And if you don't understand it, you don't use the word. So do the research and understand it before you decide to make a decision about how you're going to use it.
As black people, and I feel like there are a lot of us who already use the word, whether it's in the music industry or everyday life or not. And like you guys mentioned, it's not good to reclaim such a negative word. But there are so many people who are ignorant to the origin of the word, and wouldn't you think that it's a bit like we're a bit too far gone to just completely delete the word from our vocabulary? Like, isn't there another solution rather than just stopping the use of the word altogether?
I feel like I do agree with what she said, that we shouldn't be allowed to say the word in any context, but I feel like as black people we have the choice if we want to reclaim the word and use it with a positive connotation and use it like amongst one another. And I feel like if we want to reclaim that word and add like a positive meaning, but I feel like we do have the choice whether we want to use it or not, because it is rooted in such hatred. But I do feel like white people and people who are not black in general have no right to say the word because it's dehumanizing. And I feel like some people feel like because they're not white, they can say it, but if you're not black, you can't say it. Really emphasize. And I feel like people say like, they can say because they hear it in music or because their friends are black or their cousins are black, but they are not black. And I feel like they have no right to say that to us, regardless of the context or how they mean it in a negative way. I feel like the word itself is negative, the word itself has hatred.
And if your friend does give you an N card, there's no such thing. So
If your friend
friend does give you an N card, and it gives you the right to say the word nigger because you have nigger friends or whatever. You cannot say the word. There's no way that you have the right to be able to say it because your friends gave you the right to say it. Even if you're like, even if you are like another culture.
Can I step out of turn for a second? Where are these rules explained? Because you are expecting, one second, you are expecting a group of people who are not familiar with your culture. I'm just asking, right? So if I was not black and you are saying I can listen to this music, I can participate in the fashion, and now I want to participate as part of the language, as part of the slang, as part of all of that, but you didn't tell me the rules. How am I supposed to know? Because when you're saying it to each other, you're saying, hey, my friend. So you are also my friend. So if I also want to share in that greeting, can I not just share in that greeting? Because nobody showed me the rules. Okay, Gabby wanted to say something, and then Miss McIntosh?
Miss John, you're married, right?
I am.
Okay.
So you're saying, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, I know where I'm going. Like, you call your husband like that's like my honey, you're like my baby. Another woman called your baby, you'd be like, hey, no. My baby, you know? Like, it's just, I feel like, basically, and I also have a question for you as well. Like, you said you don't want us to use the word like completely, like you think that people should not use the word completely, but like, it's like, am I not a nigger? Like, am I a nigger? Are you great?
It's not, you're Negro.
Please give me the mic, please.
You know what? If I can say something real quick, I think, and that's why it's so important to have this dialogue, you know, because, you know, my daughter, 20 years old, she comes to me with the same thing. I'm like, Dad, am I not in there? I go, well, you learn the word, and when you read the word and understand the word in its entirety, then you come back to me and ask me that question. And I don't think whether someone outside of black if they say it makes it wrong, or black people to black people makes it right. I don't agree with that. If the word is negative, it's negative. It's a suppressing word. I think that's the origin of where the word stems from. You know, I even sometimes have a hard time saying black, because what is black, right? It doesn't identify a place of origin. It doesn't identify a location. It's African. You're African. You're African. You know, when you represent Asian, he's Asian. That's Asian. Yes. So it's just we have to be very mindful of how we associate with each other and how we call each other by our names, because, like I said, word is power and power is self.
But I'm going to answer and say, no, you're not. Just to clear that up. We're talking about origins. But we haven't named it yet. So let's name. The N-word has been historically used as a derogatory term to undermine black people. Okay? It has been used to continue to marginalize us, to suppress us, and to make us submissive be-betters. That is the origin. You can go on Google and find out everything else, but that is the origin. So the word in and of itself, to me personally, is a modern, to reclaim it, is a modern day form of internalized oppression. And internalized oppression can happen in the form of the language that we use. So I'm going to give you 4 things. Words take psychological precedence. They take psychological precedence, meaning that if you're told long enough that you are something, eventually you'll start to believe it. Quite simply, number 1, there's 4 progressions to a lie. Number 1 is that you listen to it. My mom always says, when somebody says something that you know is not true, like a hand grenade, you have 10 seconds to release it before it blows up. Shut it down. Number 2 is that you dwell on it. So you start to negotiate. The terms and conditions, and maybe I am. Aren't we all N-words? Aren't we this and that? Like, no. Shut it down. Don't negotiate it. It doesn't even have the rights, the aurora to be in your presence. Like, erase it. And then you believe it. And once you believe it, you have activated its ability to now have influence in your thinking. And once you believe it, you act. And once you act, you start to prevail self-defeating behaviors in alignment with those ideologies. And so we see, and I can honestly tell tell you, anybody I know who uses that word and reclaiming it, I can see the manifestation of that word in their life, in the way that they allow other people to treat them, in the way that they conduct themselves in relationships, in the way that they navigate through the world. They themselves, they say I'm reclaiming, it's empowering, but it's not, because I can see it. I can see it's drawn self-defeating behaviors. I can see you feeling insecure. I can see you uncomfortable in these spaces, so it's not. And then the second thing I want to say is that none of us represent all members of the Black community. So I hold space for people who choose to reclaim the word, but I ask you, for the sake of our people, for our family, for the fact that we have historically been marginalized, and we are trying to decolonize, and we are trying to fight, and we are trying to resist, and I bet you if we numbered all the Black people who on this universe, we would be the majority. But we have a responsibility to our people, to our ancestors who fought for these rights. We have a responsibility to not give non-Black people permission to use this term. So I ask you, in the name of our in the spirit of our ancestors, and in the name of decolonization and resistance, do not give white people, non-Black people, permission to use this word.
This question came up from our own conversation at our Breaking Barriers meeting, where there was disagreement whether or not Black people can be racist.
Police brutality towards minorities is commonly discussed in the U.S. context. Does it exist in Canada? How can police establish better relationships with minority youth?
Have I seen officers engaged in what I would easily call incorrect, questionable, or activities that should get them either suspended or fired? 100%. The biggest challenge we have in policing, though, and in our community, is that we're shaped by what we see on TV. While I have witnessed police brutality, and I've witnessed officers get charged as a result of their actions, the notion that we are the same as the US is completely false. It does happen here, but not on the scale that I could say, yes, there's police brutality in Canada or even in Durham region. Have things happen in Durham? Yes, 100%. But to the point where you could say, does police brutality exist? I would struggle with that, and I would challenge somebody to give me multiple examples. I only know one example of police brutality in Durham region, and I work for the organization, right, of true police brutality. Several years ago, I went to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Unit, and I started doing the training for racism in policing, bias in policing, racial profiling, carding. I did all the training for that, but I can also tell you that the service has come a long way since we went to the unit, right? If you were to drive by any Durham Regional Police Station right now, they're flying, the colors that they're flying right now, red, black, and green, right? You won't see that anywhere in any other government or private institution in this country. Any division, I challenge you, right now, Whitby, Clarington, right, Bowmanville, right now if you go by them, they're flying red and black and green for the month of February. You won't see that anywhere else. You won't see any other police service in the country that drives an Afrocentric cruiser. Right? You only see that here. That doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. Right? And I'm not saying that we're perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I can't speak for the things you've seen in Toronto. This is my home. I went to this school, and yeah, I did. A long time ago, but before you were born. But this is my home in Durham region, and you know, I'm committed, and we're committed to serving this community. And we do have a long way to go. But I would challenge anybody to say, bring me some type of evidence to show police, because I haven't seen it. I honestly haven't. But we do have officers that do need some work. I would give you that.
And because we do not have enough dialogue between, I guess, regular citizens and like the police force, we don't understand how they function. It's one of those things, it's easy from the outside perspective to always say police brutality and this and this and this and all these things. If the public is more informed on how the police works, you know what I mean? Their tactics of de-escalation, instead of saying, well, I would have done this differently. Of course, because you're not a cop. You know what I mean? Like, we don't necessarily know what it takes to handle certain situations. And from our perspective, it might look a little bit much, but perhaps that's what was needed so that whoever is being apprehended is apprehended alive. And the cops who went to go handle that situation, they can walk away from that situation as well. I have been stopped by police numerous of times. Which is weird because I'm only 26 and this used to happen to me when I was in my teens. So I understand from both perspectives, but nothing will get cleared up if we don't have the conversation and that ongoing dialogue so that both sides understand each other. Because once that happens, then there is room for so much more to go on.
With Black Lives Matter, because I wanted to have that dialogue. Black Lives Matter in Canada is not the same as Black Lives Matter in the US. Black Lives Matter in the US actually work with police services. They actually do ride-alongs, they actually participate in their training. And when I was in the training unit for Deer Regional Police, I reached out to them multiple times because I wanted to get some information from them about what they perceive the police should do right. Right? In life, you can't just keep telling people, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong, without trying to give us some information about how to do it right. And they've never returned my calls, they've never returned my emails, they've never acknowledged. I feel like if they knew I was black, they might actually talk to me. But they just see Keith Richards and it's gotta be a white guy. Right? And so I kind of stuck with that name, because I don't want to lie to them and use a different name and Jamal or Laquan or something like that. Then they might get back to me, but I'm stuck with Keith Richards. But I tried to reach out to them multiple times, and they won't give me an audience. So I can at least sleep at night saying I try to open up the lines of communication. I used to hire officers. I ran the recruiting unit for 3 years, and I never put my name to an officer that should be hired that I was not 100% in agreement that that person was a sound officer. And when you spend years, I've been an officer for 27 years, and when you see devastation for all these years, it's really hard on the human spirit. Trying to give our officers counseling to deal with that is the toughest part, because they want to be cool. All right, I work with a lot of cool people. Everybody's got a gun. Most of us have 2 guns. And so when you have all these people with guns and cool and all this stuff, they feel like they don't need that mental help, and they do. We're trying to provide that support for our officers, because this job is not about being cool, but you do see a lot of devastation, you see a lot of death, you see a lot of suicide, you see a lot of oppression, you see all those things, and you're not sound inside. It will change you.
I want to thank you all for your input. Your insights have been invaluable, as I'm sure we can all attest to. So I would love to bestow on you this token of appreciation. Shake your other hand. Thank you.
Thank you.